Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Evan Brenner, and I'm the Digital Content Coordinator at Geographic Solutions. Since late 2020, the Pathways to Employment webinar series has showcased the outstanding work that our clients perform on a daily basis. In December, team members from Tulare County discussed how they're lowering recidivism with the TC Reset portal. In February, we heard from NC Works about how their virtualized service delivery at the height of the pandemic. And in March, we heard from our clients at the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions about how the Career Solutions portal became a leading statewide online career planning platform. Today, we're pleased to present Thriving in a Changing World with our partners at Bounce. Based in Central Victoria, Australia, Bounce strives to make training smarter, not harder. Since 2006, they've been teaching essential life skills such as soft skills, emotional intelligence, rapport, and communication skills. They recently launched a new online soft skills training program. And at wayfinders.com.au, visitors can find free information and resources for those working in employment-based services. Today, I'm excited to introduce Bounce CEO and founder and former keynote speaker at the 2019 Workforce Technology Conference, Maria Smith.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Evan, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my home in Central Victoria, Australia, and where it is 4 a.m. in the morning. So I'm really excited to be here and join you for this hour. What I'm going to do is actually, as we go through, if you have any questions, because they're really important in terms of as we go through this, definitely reach out and you can put them into the questions area. And I'll do my best to sort of respond as I go, but we will have some time at the end to also go through and answer questions at the end as well. But if you've got something that comes up and you want to pop it in there, I'll attempt to answer that. But get up and stretch. I know it's your afternoon there, so it's really important that you're getting up, moving around if you need to. You've got the luxury of not having your camera on. So we've got this wonderful thing called Zoom, where people actually we get to see each other quite a bit. So it's actually nice for you guys to have your cameras off, because I know that's a nice relaxing feeling. So who are the Wayfinders? We call ourselves Wayfinders because essentially the work we do is we help people find their ways. They find their way to employment, to their best life, find their way to happiness, or find their way through the things that are challenging. And that's what we've been doing since 2006. And prior to that, my background is in coaching and training. So for me, I am so passionate about finding strategies to help people. And I've always had a passion for behavior and behavior change. And I think that passion and interest has sort of driven my focus on finding ways to help people in individuals, teams, organizations really deepen into how they can change behavior so they're living their best life. And a lot of the work we do inside employment services with job seekers or long-term unemployed people that have had generational poverty or generational unemployment, we work in the space of developing those soft skills, the emotional intelligence, and it's all based on positive psychology, which we love because it has so much evidence for our well-being and wellness. So today is all about the space of really developing and deepening our resilience and how we manage change when change is hard. And so let's face it, 2020 and 2021, they've been quite challenging. And depending on where you are in the US, you've had varying degrees of dealing with this change, with something that's sort of come in out of nowhere. I don't think there's too many countries in the world that were prepared, which meant that a lot of people weren't prepared. And we'll talk about how that impacts how we want to actually embrace change and how we can develop our teams for that change as well. So I think for me, when I think about resilience, that's probably what's shown up in all the research in terms of how people are becoming more resilient. But then for those through COVID who actually de-energized and were not as resilient. And I'm going to talk about why and how we can actually use that for ourselves and our teams going forward. So resilience is this whole idea of being able to bounce back, being able to move and cope through stress in positive ways. Because ultimately, if we're moving through things in ways that energize us, we're likely to get into recovery and be able to manage ourselves in better ways. So some of the things about resilience, obviously, we've all heard about it, but when we start to realize that when we develop that resilience, and I'm going to talk a little bit about something I'm currently doing a Master's of Applied Positive Psychology at Melbourne University, and we've just been diving into hope theory, which is really this space of how people have agency and pathway, meaning they've got the ability to think about where they're going and have the ability to have the pathway, the planning and action, and then they also have that sense of agency, like I can do this. And when we think about that in context to resilient, it's probably people that are higher hope people that have been able to get through COVID, but also have this natural resilience, because it does build our self-esteem. It does give us a sense of I'm in control of what's going on, even when it feels like we're out of control. Some of us, we've in Australia, we've had massive lockdown. Our borders still aren't open. I can't be there. So there's a lot of things out of my control. But what is in my control is my own sense of self and how I engage in the process of change. So some other, oops, sorry about that. So some of the other benefits for, understanding resilience really is that we do have a greater life satisfaction or work-life balance and live longer. So incredibly, these are all the actual evidence pieces of having more resilience. So a lot of today is about getting resilience for you. So let's just understand a little bit about change in order to understand how we can best work with it. And I find that the work I do when I'm working with teams and doing a lot of like leadership development in this space of change is that as leaders, for those of you that are leaders, if we don't understand how change affects people or how people process through it, then we have a harder time actually getting to the ability of moving them through that. And so when we can appreciate someone's experience of change, we're better able to work with them as well. So let's talk about Bridges' transition model. So this is actually, when I think of this in the context of change, I think it's just a really simple model to realize and look at. So I'm going to use my mouse. Yep, I think you can all see that, hopefully. Yes, you can. All right, so where we look at the idea of uncertainty and excitement, part of what we'll see is that this is the endings. But the thing about endings is that they can also be new beginnings as well. So even if we're ending something, so we're in a different cycle now with COVID, like things are kind of opening up. People are, feeling differently about it. And I think I heard on the news in the US that, actually I probably shouldn't say anything because it might not be correct, but that something about now with having a vaccine, you're able to you can go in public without a mask. I think that's something they're looking at different areas. Now, what's interesting about that, that's a new beginning, but it's also going to create confusion. It's going to create reservation, frustration, and denial, because people are going to think, well, hang on, I didn't hear that. That wasn't in my state, or that's not what I'm happy with, or I don't want to do that. So when we think about this idea of moving through change, people are going to have their own interpretations and experiences. But then there can be those people that get excited. So when we think about starting a new job, you may have that excitement, but there's a little bit of uncertainty, but you see it as like a new beginning, and this is great. And you transition through to that new beginning in great ways. You see the anticipation, the creativity, and the innovation and the accomplishment. So for some of you, you go through that change with a high energy. But understanding the transition from our old world thinking to new world, or the old way of being to the new way. Some of the things that can happen for people as they go in that transition zone or that neutral zone is that it can be really stressful. And some people secretly want to go back to the old world. So if there's a change function you're putting into the business, and some people are like, oh, I don't want to do the process that way. I like the old way. That worked just fine for me. And so people can find themselves going through anxiety, resistance, or confusion. And we want to understand that making people comfortable through change is really important. So for yourself, thinking about the change process, am I making it easy for me to change? And we'll talk about the brain and how that really does impact how we engage with this change. So as a leader, for those of you that work with people and lead people, thinking through this change process, having communication, you can't over communicate. Communicate in many ways. Communicate with confidence, with certainty, repetition of communication. This is what we're doing. Even if you're in your brain, you're like, I've already said this, why don't they listen? Actually, our brains need repetition. It's not that people are ignoring you. It's likely that they've got other things going on because the change process for some people is stressful. And so we need repetition to nudge through that. And that's the brain in how it operates and works with change. So it really is about planning this, communicating it, and being really strategic so that we can actually handle people's frustrations or struggles as well. You also want to make sure people are feeling open about this process and have a sense of vulnerability, that it's okay to be uncertain. So even for yourself to go, oh, I'm uncertain in this change, I'm feeling anxious, and it's okay, I'm going to work through this. When we give ourselves a bit of freedom in that vulnerability or in that fear of the perception of the experience, we actually can open ourselves up for an easier journey. And the science behind this will make sense very shortly. The one thing to realize is that as people go through the transition, things like productivity can be low. People will get decision fatigue. People can find themselves going through this whole process of looking for comfort. So whether it's increased gossip in the workplace or for the individuals, increased eating to find comfort while they're going through this state, if they experience that transition with anxiety, resistance, or confusion. So part of that then is really important to find the wins, celebrate the little successes, and really keep the belonging part, keep the communication. So how do you apply that to yourself? The same way you think about, how do I connect with myself, celebrate my small wins through these stages of uncertainty, and look to the future. The power of being able to have a clear vision, even though we may not know when we can travel outside of our country, for example, here, we still have a vision for that future and maintain that. But celebrating those little wins is so important, and even if they're tiny, for yourself and for others. So let's talk about how the process of change actually happens, and thinking about this from the context of the 5 stages of change. So some of you may be familiar with this, this is all based on Prashaka and Declemente's work around behavioral change and how the 5 stages of how anyone changes. So I know in a lot of employment models in workforce development, this is the piece of, how we can apply change. A lot of the research from this has been around smoking cessation. So how do people change from, not wanting to do it to doing it, and how do we influence that? I think another powerful part about the understanding how change happens is that the energy it takes to change, and a lot of times people are forgetting that it takes energy to change. And so when we think about, well, why don't they just stop smoking, or why don't they just eat better food, or why don't they go for a walk, or why aren't they happier, or why don't they deal with their anger in the workplace, or whatever the thing is, we've got to realize that people go through change in different ways. And when we understand the change, these 5 stages of change, it could be related to that behavior. So this isn't a personality thing, like this person's pre-contemplation. It's actually a behavior piece about that specific change. So let's go through the pre-contemplation. So pre-contemplation is, I don't even know that I've got to change. I don't know that I don't know that I don't know that I've got to change. So when we think about ourselves, we go, it's not until maybe we get some feedback. Maybe we're in a meeting with our boss, our leader, a friend, and somebody mentions something. You're like, oh, I didn't know I had that habit, or I didn't know I did that. So perhaps it's cutting people off. And you're in meetings and someone's sharing an idea, oh, let me tell you something, and you cut them off. That could be something you don't realize you do that. And until someone brings that up or brings awareness to it, you wouldn't know that needs to change. But unless you have some feedback or some really critical information that brings your attention to it, you wouldn't know that you need to change. So what you want to do in this space, when we think about our clients, if we're working in the space of employment, helping people into work, it's about thinking of how much I can give them the information they need. How much can I nudge? And what I mean by nudge is provide them with the information so their brain can go away and think about that. So when we look at, like, if you're in a medical facility and you go to see the doctor and you sit there and there's a brochure and you look over and it says, you know, everyone should be getting checked for X. That nudge is the pre-contemplation. So somebody who maybe isn't going and having a check on something, but they need that, I didn't know I had to do that. That can nudge that behavioral part. If we think about helping people that are wondering what's next for them, we want to provide space for them to think about those changes. So it could be training. And by providing information about, here's a training that might help you, we're nudging them to start to realize that, oh, maybe I do need to skill up in order to get that job. So the context of where this applies is when we want to create change for ourselves and for others, we want to actually provide the information, and sometimes we've got to provide it over time and a few times. Oftentimes in our Bounce program, we have a face-to-face program we train trainers to deliver in the US and New Zealand and here in Australia. And a lot of the clients we work with specifically are what you would consider in the pre-contemplation stage relating to work. And it's our model in Australia is very much about having long-term unemployment and getting quite into habit around that for some job seekers, not all job seekers. So pre-contemplation for them is about getting them to nudge behaviorally, what must I change? And it could be build confidence, you know, check on my skills, start to notice my presentation. And we like to do that in our Bounce program where we nudge that along. So the next piece is contemplation. So this is somebody who's kind of like, I think I got to change. I don't, you know, they've been given the feedback. Oops, sorry about that. My thing just clicked. Sorry about that, everyone. I just got my thing. So contemplation is where people are kind of feeling like they've been given the feedback, they're aware of it now. So it's not, I don't know what I don't know, the Johari's window, they're actually, oh yeah, okay, maybe I got to change. I don't really want to change. Why should I change? I don't need to stop smoking. You can't tell me what to do. Or, oh, I'm not doing this diet. Oh yes, but I want to do it. No, I'm not doing it. It's too hard. So they can move between, they're contemplating it, but then there's that negative, positive experience of it. Like, this is too hard. I don't want to do this. Again, the brain is trying to weigh up, do I want to engage in this change? So when we actually can talk to somebody about the barriers or the misconceptions, getting them to start addressing some of those things. So, you know, I don't want to take that course. Oh, so what's stopping you from taking that course? I just hated school and I don't want to be in front of people. I don't want to learn. Okay, so if you did want to learn, what might change? So those questions, those coaching questions, allow people to begin to think and contemplate differently. If we let people stay in contemplation and we don't engage in the process of asking the questions or, you know, demystifying the things they may think of or the barriers, they're likely to then just default back to pre-contemplation and not even be in the consideration. A lot of your clients, a lot of people we work with, people that are leading teams, people in change can be sitting in this contemplation like, do I want to change my behavior? No, I don't, right? And so as a coach, it's really important that we think about, and I think everyone's a coach. If you're a leader, you're a coach. If you're working with people, you're a coach. If you're any human being, if you've got kids, we're coaching. And so it's about the quality of those questions that we're asking. So let's look at our preparation stage, which is what's next. And this is where somebody might actually start to say, okay, I'm ready to change. They've gone through the process, they've weighed it up, you've been able to help them understand what they could do next. They're feeling a sense of energy, because remember, change is hard. So we want to get them feeling good and easy and convenient. So now it's the little changes. And I'm a big believer in working with a range of people since 2006 and prior to that, by living in the US for 15 years, working in coaching and training. The thing about change is that you want to make sure there's a positive feeling, because people are more likely to go to it. And change that is intrinsically motivated is going to be far more powerful. And the idea now is that I've nudged them along to now go, I think I can do this change. I really believe that I'm able to do it. And then they get in action and they're going to take action to change that behavior. So it's important that we're providing the positive reinforcements. We're keeping people like, that was a win, that was a win. And they might default, they might take a step back. They might find themselves not being motivated or engaged. So our role in helping people is really being that person to get them forward in an intrinsic way, not a big stick approach. We want to find inner motivation for people. And then there's maintenance and relapse. And so this is where people are more likely to be striving in their behavior. So they can maintain it. They're able to say, I feel good and I can keep doing this. And that might take somebody one day, but likely it can take years. So understand that when we're working, depending on the amount of behavior change, and you probably just look at the weight loss industry and how incredibly massive it is. You look at the bookshop on all the diets out there. Most people are filtering through these stages and not actually having a plan that works for them, a plan that engages them, or their reason why. And so the maintenance part will be happening if somebody's quite driven, intrinsically motivated, they're connected to it, and they're rewarded within more than externally. So we want to also make sure we're continually checking in with our clients in whatever capacity, whatever the behavior change is, or even for ourselves. So one of the things that can energize us through the change process is our strengths. And I'm a big fan of strengths. There's been a ton of research in the space of strengths and valid research, and things that actually really do make a difference in terms of how we work with people. Think of it like this. When we are playing in our strengths, we're going to be naturally energized, naturally engaged. And a lot of us are in a job where we play to our strengths. And if you've been in a job for a long time, it's likely that you play to your strengths and you love your job. You're playing to your strengths. And so strengths are those things that you naturally find yourself doing. So if you're the organizer in your team, if you're the person who's like got it all set up, I know what I've got to do, I've got to get this done and this done and this done, that's you and your strengths. You get energized, you love it, and you get it done. If it's not a strength and you're in a role where you're organizing, you'll probably go, oh, I've got to get that thing organized. I just don't have time. I'm not going to get there. And we can de-energize. And that's a pretty good indicator that it's probably not a strength, but it could be. It doesn't mean it's a weakness. It could be a learned behavior, and therefore we can lean on other strengths. So interesting research on strengths, and that is that when a focus over 12 months period of people that were focusing on strengths, so they elicited their strengths and their weaknesses, and those that had a focus on strengths for the 12 months, just their strengths. So let's not even look at weaknesses. What are you great at? Let's keep doing that. So in an example would be, you sit down with your staff and somebody, you know that they're late, or you know they don't get their reports on time, or something's occurring, and then you go to say, oh, look, your time management's really off, let's work on that. That would be focusing on perhaps a weakness as a generalization. But in the context of this research, what they found is when they only focused on the strengths, people's performance increased 36.4%. Now, when we looked at the weaknesses, what happened is there was a decrease by 26.8% focusing on the weaknesses. So when we think about that for ourselves, anybody you're working with looking for what's next for them, if they're leaning into their strengths, they're going to be more energized, more engaged. They're going to find it easy to build confidence. When somebody's leaning into those weaknesses, they're going to find themselves exhausted, worn out, and not really flourishing, not finding themselves internally or intrinsically motivated, because they're just reminding themselves of something they don't feel good at or feel good about. So strengths-based approach with our clients in any change cycle is an incredible thing to be doing. And that's where on our own, whether we work from home still, and I think a lot of people still are, we're still working from home. Part of that is, what can I do to make sure I'm in my strengths? I'm a people person. Would I love to be there right now, talking to you all, connecting with people, having a hug? Absolutely, because that's something that I love to engage. I love connecting and being part of people. And so with COVID, that changed, but I actually feel connected right now. I'm actually feeling the experience of my sharing. I mean, a lot of my strengths around engaging in this process of education or imparting knowledge or sharing the engagement. Like, the questions are always going to be great to engage with. So when we think about this from the point of view of our own strengths, it really is about thinking, where am I in that space of working to my strengths? Now, it doesn't mean pretend your weaknesses aren't there. We want to notice when I'm in my strengths, I'm going to have an energy about what I do. If this wasn't a strength for me, so fortunately I'm pretty tech comfy. If technology wasn't something that I love to present, I might be like a little bit edgy, like, that didn't work, this didn't work, but I'm pretty comfortable with it. Even I'm in a different area, like GoToWebinar's a new one for me, and there's a few new things, but Evan's been amazing. We've had a couple of experiences with it. I'm like, okay, I've got this. So that helps build my strength of kind of being able to know the information and getting across it. So if you've got a strength, for example, a weakness, let's say detail is not your thing, get energized by the things that do naturally give you strength, and then focus on that detail. So you can tell someone's strengths by how they engage in sharing. And you can find that with your clients by saying, you know, what do you love doing? What do you enjoy? Tell me the things that you did when you were young that you found yourself really being energized by. That's strength spotting. And that's noticing those things that give people their strengths. And that's a really unique piece to how we can begin to find people's strengths and work to their strengths as well. So when we apply this in our own settings, and think about this energy chart here. So if I'm in a space of, hopefully you can see my cursor. I could change this thing, but let's do the highlighter. Okay, there we go. Look at that. I just highlighted my screen. Okay, there's something new and different.
Maria.
Oops. Yep.
I just wanted to slightly segue in just real quick and just let the audience know if you'd like to submit a question, there's a question box in the GoToWebinar tools. Go ahead and submit it there. And also I have some links in the chat. So
awesome. Thank you, Evan. Thanks for that. So hopefully everyone can see my little, oh, it just changed. Sorry. Let's go back. I don't think I'm going to mess with the technology because I think something might break. So when we think about our energy levels, so if we go to this whole idea of I'm high energy, usually in positive, it's usually going to be something that I find myself naturally engaging with. Now, high energy could be excitement, could be passion. High energy negative could be rage. Negative low energy may be depression. And positive low energy could be serenity. So when we look at this energy chart in context to our strengths and in context to how we are with people, we can influence people with our energy level, especially through change. So when I think about the whole process of where I engage in my strengths, if I notice that, for example, let's say detail wasn't a strength for me, and I find myself engaging in the process down here in negative low energy, if I engage in the process of a detail, like down here, I might find it harder to engage in it. So when I've done a coaching session, let's say, or I've had a meeting or a presentation, I'm actually going to have more positive energy, high energy. And once I've done that, I'm energized to go in to do the task of detail. So part of understanding this is while we go through change, we may find ourselves lower in energy. So the things we've got to put in our day, the things that energize us in a positive way to help us get through the uncertainty. So something to reflect on for yourself. Now, let's talk about the brain. Now, for some of you who were in my keynote in 2019, and I don't know whether anyone's got their cups, and I don't know if you can see me, but here's our little cup that I gave out to everybody, and hopefully you'll know and remember this stuff. So if we just talk about the brain and change, it's really important to understand what is happening for people. So we know that the oldest part of the brain is that reptilian part, and we know that that's crucial for evolution, for survival. So what happens is that the limbic brain, or the emotional brain, its role is to protect it. So it will often watch and experience the world through the senses and decide whether something is safe or not safe. So in the workplace setting, it may be, oh, this person's upsetting, or I've got to work from home and I need to be with people, I need to connect. And so the brain might think, oh, we're stressing out, we're a little worried. And it may even start to pump adrenaline into the large muscle groups to get ready to either fight, flight, or freeze. I do want to point something out. It is interesting to note the studies that were done on this. So they actually scared people who then would have this response. The amygdala would hijack and fight, flight, freeze would take place, is what they called it. It was actually done with men. And what they found with women is they tend and mend rather than flight, fright, freeze. So I think it's also important to realize that there's probably more women on this webinar. There's probably more women in the sector of helping people, or care sector, supporting people. So it's interesting to note that the response may be tend and mend, and we may overdo that, which then means that we could be de-energizing ourselves because we're giving so much tending and mending to others, but we need to do it to ourselves and then fill up that cup. So when that amygdala hijacks though, the limbic brain can hijack the prefrontal cortex, which is our logical, controlled, and I'm going to bring this back later in the presentation, because what actually happens is we want that prefrontal cortex. That is so important for change. This is where we have logical thinking, planning, preparing, action focus. When we were talking about the change process, this is what we've got to engage for the change process to happen. If people through the 5 stages of change aren't engaging this part of the brain, they're likely to stay in the process of not changing. So one of the neurotransmitters for the brain that's really important for that is dopamine. And dopamine is something that we have limited amounts of through the day. And so we have to really think about our days and our functioning, especially through stressful times. So, you know, in the context of how dopamine can work over time, and everyone can be different here, but as a generalization, most people will wake up and have a dopamine hit through the day, and then it might go down in the afternoon. So that 4 o'clock time slot might be where you are de-energized. So it's 4:30 in the morning for me now. I think I got a fair bit of dopamine, but I'm also engaging in something that I'm energized by and I love. So I'll probably have a workout after this and just start my day nice and early. So when we think about this with our day, when we're going through change, if we're not mindful of how's my dopamine going, how am I actually engaging? Dopamine is that neurotransmitter of pleasure, but it's also reward. So it says, I did something, I feel good. I get a reward. The brain will give itself that experience to keep engaged, which is part of the evolution, right? So if we actually think about our day, we want to think about where are my dopamine levels. So thinking through your day, where am I most energized? And for some of you, it may be the afternoon. For some of us, it's the evening. And you hit that 9 o'clock and then suddenly you're like, oh, I'm energized. I'm going to work on that piece of work. And so how this applies to you is important to think about. I do want to point out at that medium level, that careful, accurate, calm is actually a good point to focus on contracts and detail. So it's interesting if you're not a detailed person in your strengths, and maybe it's a learned behavior, you could do it, it just de-energizes you. When you're, it sounds counterintuitive, but when you're actually lower in the levels of dopamine, if you actually engage in the process of a contract, you're going to pay attention to the errors or the issues, because you're a little bit like, oh. And so it's actually interesting, the brain will focus on it. And it's good to think about where you're scheduling that. Now, for me, I like to be energized, then go into detail, because I'll do it in 20 minutes versus 2 hours as well. So again, some of the things that I like, and we've got this great little cup, the fill up your cup here, is to all the things that do energize us and help with our dopamine levels and help us feel good and engage through change. Those things like connecting with people, exercise, eating good food. So if you're at home, and obviously if some of you haven't had that chance to connect, some of you are coming back into the workplace, excuse me. And so it's about finding ways to get connected. And we've been able to learn that through COVID. We've been able to jump on our phones, FaceTime, Zooms, Teams, whatever video conferencing you use, we've found that. But there is a kinesthetic element, meaning tactile. And those are the things where if we're not taking care of ourselves by walking, just getting movement happening, or eating good food, then we're likely to find ourselves a bit more de-energized. But we must be vigilant. And you'll see on the Wayfinders website, we've got a podcast, and I spoke at the beginning of the COVID thing with a mental health expert here in Australia, and his words were, be vigilant about your self-care. And I think that's a really important piece. So one of the theories that I think are really powerful in the idea of how we actually engage is through positive emotion, is broaden and build. So Barbara Fredrickson has a great book called Positivity, and it's all on this theory. So when we look at the idea of what am I doing in these areas to broaden and build my positive emotion. So intellectually, what am I doing to engage my brain? Excuse me. What am I doing to engage my brain? What am I doing to learn differently? We've got the social aspects. How am I connecting? Even if it's not virtually, I can be connecting and building those social resources as well, helping people, volunteering. a lot of you in your roles is really developing that skill. You're engaging and helping people. That's broadening and building your positive emotion. The physical part is crucial. What do you do to physically engage? Forget about physical exercise is about looking good. Make it about feeling good. That's a really powerful reframe on how you get, if you're like, I'm just not motivated, you're in pre-contemplation, thinking about, actually, I'm doing it to feel good, and it's not about how much weight I lose or anything. And I think a lot of people may not move because they get stuck in that space. And then psychological, these are the things that are actually going to help your confidence, the strengths, leaning into those really good energizing things. So let's talk about building resilience with others. And some of the things that we can do is really communicating the purpose of the change that could be happening in your team, the change with somebody who's unemployed. Like, talk through the process to create a process for the brain, system 2, to know, here's my plan, here's my steps. People need to know what's next. We must have certainty. And in the context of leadership, providing certainty is really crucial. Also, that we want to make sure that the steps are taken to ensure the team members affected by the change, they've got knowledge, skills, and ability to be able to make the change. And if we need to skill people up to do that, that's going to help them energize in order to do the change. A lot of times we just haven't gone through change, and so we don't know how to do the change. So again, developing people's strengths is going to be a great way to lean into that change and fulfill the strength where you can. So if your strength is connecting with people and being with people, what other strengths do I have that I can do at home? Or how can I find that fulfillment? And then managers, leaders in this call, really making yourself accessible, over communicate and communicate. Even if you're thinking, I've said this already, you got to over communicate. And change doesn't happen overnight. It's one day, one moment at a time. So also, you want to look at actively seeking the input from employees concerning challenges, expectations, and innovation. Allow people the chance to engage in the desired outcome, but let them talk about their vulnerabilities, their fears. Don't shut it down. The minute we shut that down, people just feel disengaged and just think, well, I'm not validated, or my sharing isn't important. Sometimes people just need to say it and then they're over it. Incredibly, speaking about those things that challenge us can actually free us up. And then the positive reinforcement. Remember, that change cycle needs positive reinforcement to go, you're doing great, this is working. So understand the milestones and those moments of whatever change you're going through, and then encouraging that positive energy, the wins, the celebrations, acknowledgement, recognition. And then the positive emotion, getting your team to look at physical, psychological, intellectual, social needs so we can build positive emotion. And again, the things that some of the teams I've seen, even my own team, we had lots of things we did that were, we've got to lock out at 4 o'clock and go for a walk, or go to the gym, do some yoga, do practice at home, or whatever they could do. So I love this context of Chip and Dan Heath, who've done a fair bit of work around this, but they've actually borrowed from Jonathan Haidt, who's done some profound work on change, and this is actually his model. And the book's fantastic, though. Very simple how to change when change is hard. Chip and Dan Heath, great book for change. 3 concepts to think about, and that is that we have the rider on the elephant, right? The rider is the person who's the prefrontal cortex, the planner, the person who's saying, where am I going, what am I doing? And they've got a plan. And then you've got the elephant, who's more about that system 1, the emotional, like, what's my motivation? Why do I want to change? And then the pathway is how we create clear pathways for change. So what looks like resistance is oftentimes just a lack of clarity. So if you're noticing people not wanting to change or change a behavior, it's going to be sitting in that space. If you've got a client that's thinking, well, I'm not going to apply for that job, or I'm just not feeling confident about this, and they're finding themselves de-energized, they might just need some clarity on something. And it could just be the coaching conversation that really elicits that response as well and helps that person. Motivating the elephant is, again, system 1. It's about energizing them into the why. Oftentimes what we think of is laziness, is exhaustion, because people are just so tired. Our brain is not loving the idea of change, system 1, and I'll show a little graph for this. So we've got to motivate the elephant for why, for purpose. Why are we having this change? Or what's my why to go through this uncertainty? What's my end goal? What can I win that person? Like, what's in it for me in the end? So getting people to feel that energy and motivation, shaping the path is so important, because oftentimes we think, oh, these people aren't changing, but actually, have you made it easy? Have you made it convenient? When you think about teams and people and getting people to jump onto a new system, for example, is it easy and convenient for people to engage in the process? With our online soft skills program for job seekers, we've done everything we could to do ease and convenience. But we know we have to have security, which does the two-factor authentication and all the other things that must make it secure, so their content is really held tightly. But that means they've got to do some things that for some people engaging makes it hard. So we have other strategies to engage them through that and make the path nice and clear, but also clear and simple. So when we think about change from this point of view, I think what some great examples on the lack of clarity or the directing the rider is that when there was some health promotion that was done in the US, getting people to change, like eat healthy, is such a generalized view. And so what we need to do is think about the clarity is, rather than, and this was something that was done in some marketing, is rather than go, hey, eat healthy, what they actually did is focused on don't drink full cream milk, drink 2% milk as an initiative. That increased people's purchasing of 2% milk to increase, because that's one little thing that I understand and I can do. Eat healthy is broad, and it can mean, well, what does that actually look like? So thinking about those changes that you can do for others and make it nice, clean, and simple. And also, it's really important to realize that just because you're thinking, God, they just need more confidence, or just apply for those jobs, or take that training course, or, oh, why aren't they doing these things? We've got to realize that it's just, in our mind, we might be really efficient and great at something. But for some people, change means 2,000 steps in their mind. And so we've got to keep it simple and nudgeable, like one little thing they can do to change, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So oftentimes when we think about the motivating the elephant, this is actually what, we think, oh, they're just lazy. Well, actually, it takes self-control to change behavior. So going to the gym or having an exercise routine, that actually takes energy to do. And the elephant will conserve energy. System 1 will conserve energy at all costs. So it's important to think about this where we conserve energy, or we have that less self-control. So change is hard because people get exhausted and wear themselves out, which is why you want to actually shape the path and make it really easy for that change to happen. Nudgeable, simple. Like, here's a brochure to that training, go away and have a think about it. Hey, here's an application, try that. Here's a link, go look at that. Nudgeable change, especially for those that may be really unresourceful in their emotional state. They don't have a lot of positive emotion engaged. They may be what's called low hope, so they don't have as much agency, thinking, or pathway strategy. And that's the coaching piece that you're providing that. In our coach program that we've partnered with Workforce 180, we're about to launch, and I think there's a link in there for everyone. We're about to launch our Case Management 3 in partnership with Dr. Beverly Ford. And the Case Management 3, we talk about all of this stuff is in there as a coaching strategy, the scripts, what are we asking, how do we ask the questions, so we can do this. We've sort of done the hard yards and designed it. But part of it is that we want people to feel like they can really be confident as a coach in their process of helping others. If we don't have the skill to do it, we'll avoid it. We'll just go to what we've always done. And so in order to shape that path, we've got to think about the questions we're asking and making it simple. And when we think about change, if you think about the big changes, so getting married, having a baby, like, through our lives, they're the big changes that we get excited and engaged with, most of us, because there's something about that engages us on the path. And so what we've got to do to think about getting people to get engaged in that change is make it easy, make it simple. Okay, so let's talk about, and I'll just check if there's any questions. So if there are any questions, that's good. Let's talk about System 1 and System 2. And, oh, sorry, Evan, did you have one?
Maria, I didn't have a question right now. I'll save my questions till the end, but I just wanted to give just let everybody know if they'd like to ask a question, go ahead and throw it in the window and we'll ask at the end.
Awesome, thank you, Evan. That's great. So I'm just going to go through this last piece here so everyone has a chance to reflect on this. So I've got a nice little model to put it all together. Everything I've just been talking about, this is a simple, easy way to remember this whole process. Daniel Kahneman has done some profound work on this idea of system 1 and system 2. His book is Thinking Fast and Slow. It's about this big. I should have it here. But it's actually really quite powerful. But simply put, when we think about people and their change, system 1 is all about that limbic brain. This is the elephant. And so it loves ease and convenient. It loves repetition, and it's also fast thinking. So what I mean by that is it doesn't actually have self-reflection. So oftentimes if we're driving and we're tired, exhausted, we're frustrated, someone cuts us off, and then suddenly we say something that we go, that was my outside voice. That's going to be your system 1. Fast thinking, but not reflecting, going, that's probably not an appropriate thing to say. It's also automatic. So what it wants to do is conserve energy where it can. And so it will create habits. And this is where biases sit, where bias lives. And so oftentimes we think, why are they doing that? That's so, this is offensive, or that's not what you say, or that's inappropriate. It's because this system is quite by default patterned, right? It just does these things and it's lazy. So when we're talking about change and thriving through change, system 1 is kind of like, oh, you know what? I'll just do what I've always done because that's easy. I'll keep reaching for the cookies because I get a good hit on that. That feels good. It energizes me for 10 minutes. I get the sugar hit. I'll just keep doing it. Even though I know I maybe shouldn't, the brain's going to go, that's easy, keep doing it. So what we want to do is hack that system and create easy, convenient things. So the things that we want to change in ourselves and others, the more easy and simple and convenient you make it, the more likely the change will engage in that process. Thinking for yourself, what's the change I want? What do I need to do to make it simple and easy? If we don't make it simple and easy, we'll just simply go back to defaults and automatic thinking. We want it, these shortcuts that happen, we can hack them to have them shortcutting towards the stuff we want. And we go right into that in our coaching program. But our soft skills online program really broadens this idea of people's change process as well. Then we have system 2, and system 2 is the reflective. System 2 monitors, controls thoughts and actions. It is self-aware and it's high energy usage. So putting these two together, system 1 is by default lazy. It doesn't mean people are lazy. It's just the brain is going to go, make it easy, make it simple, make it so I don't have to use my energy. System 2 requires energy. So if we don't have the dopamine giving it energy, because that's its fuel of choice, then we are going to probably find ourselves not getting engaged in the change process. So we want these two working together. There's not an either or, we find a way. So system 1 has some great habits, has some great energy and engagement. The stories, the memories, the values, our drivers live there. What's my why to engage in my process of change? Deepening intrinsic why to change that thing, or why to be committed to that change. Even if the change is out of my control, what can I control? And what can I do for myself in that change? And then engage system 2 in the plan and the process. It wants to be able to go, what am I doing next? What am I doing next? So system 1's the elephant, system 2's the rider. And as we go forward into change, we start to think about those ideas of how change really can help us and others. And understanding this, especially in the context of COVID, but in the context of our future, what does the future look like? The more I can give myself a certainty. So here's what I know for sure. I am in control of my body and what I do. If I choose to wake up and have a walk versus sleeping in or getting on my phone, I know the result is I'm probably going to be more de-energized over here, because I know it doesn't feel as good. I remember a couple of years ago, my son, Lucas, who's 15 and a half now, who's now this tall, who was my little darling Lucas, he is fast asleep in the other room. If you knew I was talking about you, he'd be like, Mom. So I know for Lucas, the whole process of getting him to, for example, eat his vegetables when he was little, I engage in the process of eating vegetables in a positive way to go, oh, don't they taste great? So his brain associated eating that vegetable in a good way and associated it into feeling good. So I don't have to nudge him now to eat his veggies. You sit in last night, we had a beautiful meal and all the veggies get eaten. There's no question. And that behavior is now instilled. We started early on those sort of things, going to bed early. Typically, he gets to bed early, but it's a habit that started early. So getting these changes embedded is really important. And so it's important for ourselves to think about my why to do the change. What's in it for me? And how can I intrinsically get motivated? So just to think about for yourself in some reflection here, what are the things that I can start putting in place in order to benefit from my change? So COVID's happened, that's out of my control, but what am I in control with? So for me, I know it feels good to exercise. So I do that thing because I've trained my brain, and versus the things that I know I don't feel good, and I know it changes how my day works as well. So when we think about the change, it's important that we start early and embed it. And another little example with Lucas, years ago, he was playing he was playing a game, and I can't remember the game. Oh, anyway, he came in and he goes, Mom, I always feel de-energized after playing that game, and I've even forgotten it and deleted it out of my brain. And he came, he said, I don't really feel good, Mum, but I keep doing it. And I said, okay. So I reached out and I grabbed his arm and I pinched his arm. He goes, oh, Mum, that hurts. I go, it does, doesn't it? He goes, yes. And I said, that hurts, and you don't want me to do that again, do you? He goes, no. And I said, see, that pain, you know straight away, that doesn't feel good. I said, but we've got to link that pain to you playing that game. It was Fortnite. And he just said, oh, and it just, the light bulb went off, and he got it. He got it to go, because the pain wasn't strong enough to change. It was enough to go, I don't feel good. And that was he was in pre-contemplation. Then he spoke to me and he recognized the not feeling good, but didn't link it totally to the game. I linked it to the game. Then I did the pinch and linked it to the game. And then he said, I've got to change. He deleted the game and stopped playing when all his other friends were like, what? And he was like, it doesn't feel good. So I'm going to stop that behavior. And he doesn't play, which is great. So think about your change. What are you going to do? Make it easy, convenient, and engage in the why. What's important about that change, and get the what's in it for me and that intrinsic change. Build resilience through action, through building those things that make you feel good. What are you doing to learn in the brain? What are you doing for your body, your social engagement, and that connection to people? These are the things that are important for us to deal with change. When change is something that we're not in control of, we've got to build our own capacity to go through that change as well. So we've got a little job coach quiz. You're welcome to jump on there. I think the link is in there also. And you can jump in there, and it's just a nice little job coach quiz. What type of job coach are you? And then it comes back with a nice little report. You're going to get an idea of how you might be in terms of how you operate with change, how you coach others, and that style of coaching. And then it's got some strategies on how to work with that as well. So I'll put the last slide up. So if anybody does have any questions, pop them in there. One of the things that you'll see inside the questions area, I think in the chat area, you will see some of our links there. And definitely, if you're interested in learning more about our Bounce soft skills, we are doing a partnership with Geographic Solutions. We're very excited. I know there'll be a thing going out where they'll actually have the Bounce soft skills program inside the system. So if you are using their system, you're going to actually be able to have access to that, and we'll be launching that soon. So definitely watch for that, because that program will help nudge and help your clients change. But there's also a whole process where we're going to help others as well in that space of coaching others and developing that change also. So definitely jump in, reach out to me if you've got any questions. You can reach me at the info@bounceaustralia.com, or you can reach me at Maria, M-A-R-I-A, at bounceglobal.net. And again, you can check out our Bounce Australia website. We also have a phone number there you can reach us on. But you can also reach us through our Bounce USA site as well. And I think all those links are in there. And you can see the Bounce soft skills information. If you want to reach out and talk through, if you've got, you want to talk about your team and how you want to enhance their ability to go through change or build their resilience up, We've got some really great programs to do that as well. But I'm going to throw it back and see if there's any questions. I've only given us 5 minutes, sorry, but sorry about that, Evan.
Maria, that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to let you know that I do have a copy of Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. So
I love it. Well done. Awesome.
I've only made it about halfway through. It's a tough book to read, but it was recommended via like a marketing chat that I follow. So I started reading it.
Fantastic.
I have a few questions. I see, Melanie, I see that your hand is raised. If you, I can unmute you if you'd like to ask a question, or if you want to write it in the question window. I don't know. I've seen the hand raised since the beginning. Melanie, let me know. Also, we have a question from Joe. He asks if you can briefly explain the energy chart again.
Yeah. So thinking of the energy chart is to look at and in fact, I can go back to that slide. So when we look at our energy levels and how we operate in terms of ourselves, it's good to do a nice little brief overview. Where am I sitting in the day? In fact, there's an incredible app. It is Australian, but it's a free app. A beautiful social enterprises pushed it out, and it's called Mood Meter, MOODMETER. You can find it in the app section. What I love is you go in and this energy chart is in there, but it's colored. So for example, you might be able to see, I know I'm probably too small, but they've got the areas and you can allocate how am I feeling today? This self-awareness activity allows us to bring attention to where my energy levels are. So if I'm high energy positive, what do I do well in that space? And not all tasks are appropriate for that. I'm thinking about the times with our teams. If we come in high energy and everyone's low energy, that's not actually going to motivate. Bringing self-awareness to the moods and the energies that we provide. In the context of strengths, when we look at energy chart, it's about when I'm in that positive high energy, I'm probably in my strengths. And a lot of the research points to that. It doesn't mean I need to be high energy. I'm just going to feel good going through it. Those things that might be learned behaviors, they're things I can do. They just don't energize me. I might be more low positive or even low negative. So hopefully that explains it. It's a powerful self-reflection exercise to think about your levels of energy through the day. So then you design your day based on where are your energy. So if you're high energy in the morning, it's probably a good time to tackle the things that de-energize you because you're likely to get through them faster. But most of us, because of system 1, by default, go for the easy, go for lazy and go, I'll just push that off, and we avoid those tasks that might de-energize us. We need to reverse that and do them when we're energized. Hopefully that answers that.
Maria, thank you so much. One question that I had is, what are a few of the top skills that you see, and what are the best ways to learn or some of those soft skills?
So I think, look, into where I see soft skills going is that space of how I can deepen my emotional intelligence. So self-awareness and self-regulation means that I'm going to be better as an employee, a better leader, a better communicator, a better parent, better community member, because I'm aware of myself enough to know where I've got to deepen my knowledge and skills. So thinking about that idea of soft skills, yes, we've got, communication and things like reliability, planning, problem solving. This is actually deeper than that. When I think about bouncing our soft skills, it's actually developing behavior towards people being in their best self. Yeah. Hopefully that answers that.
Yes, and then what are some of the most common barriers to change that you hear about as a coach, and how do you overcome them?
Great question. So I think, look, at the end of the day, I think a lot of the biggest barriers, and I coach people at high senior level in government and people that from all walks of life, and oftentimes it just comes back to confidence. And when people often don't believe they can achieve something, they won't engage in it. So as a coach, it's about getting people to have a reset or a mindset change. But my role is to show the way, right? Light the way, be the way shower, to have them see it. So great coaches ask great questions. They don't tell or advise. So a really great skill is developing the listening and asking questions for the person to learn to get to their solution and answer, because I believe we all have the answers within. We've just got to find those as well. So great questions are always a good skill to develop in helping others.
Excellent. Thank you. Maria, I don't have any more questions. To the audience, there are several links in the chat. Go ahead and look down there if you'd like to see those. A couple of questions about if this PowerPoint is recorded and if it will be available. Yes. In the next day or two, we will get this edited and we will send it out to all attendees, both those who attended and who could not. So look out for an email from us with that information. We'll also include all the links that we put into the chat. And Maria, thank you. You said what time is it right now over there?
It's 5 a.m. now, so I'm ready to
Wow.
go. I'm going to get my workout gear on and go for a workout. So thank you everyone for energizing my day. One day I hope to meet you and connect with you and do a live session. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today.
Thank you, Maria. And everyone, just to let you know, there will be another Pathways in May. Keep an eye out for that. I believe it's going to be on temporary assistance for needy families, jobs, first employment services with the Connecticut Department of Labor. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending our Pathways to Employment. Thank you, Maria. Have a great day. Talk to everybody soon.
Thank you. Sounds great.